I've heard this before, but I really internalized that whether bad things that happen to you are your fault or not, they're your responsibility. And the responsibility is how you react to them.
Hey everyone, Andrew here, otherwise known as the guy who wrote the last Law of Attraction book you'll ever need to read. And I've got a really special guest interview today, a fellow reader who wrote in with an amazing story that I was telling him before we hit the record button. I've got radar for these things. And when I read certain things, I'm like, okay, this is going to connect with people, but more importantly, it's going to help them. I'll kind of ask, and you can tell I rarely do this, but I think this gentleman's story is really going to resonate and I think really help people along their path, whether it's regarding weight loss or anything else. So with that in mind, Steve Putman, thank you so much for being here, my friend, and welcome to my YouTube channel.
Thank you so much for having me. Like we said before we started recording, thank you so much for your book. And a little housekeeping before we stop. Everybody hit that smash that like button, subscribe, go buy the book because I recommend it to everybody.
Oh, thank you so much. You know what, dude, you are way better at me at that thing. You've got the YouTube part down to the science. So thank you for that. And you know what, along those lines, everyone listen to Steve. He knows his stuff. In fact, to dive on in, just to set the context for this conversation, I'm going to read most of your email that you sent to me. Okay. And just so people can kind of see where we're coming from here. You basically said, I got your book after making a stab at LOA with some other thought leaders last September. COVID was in full lockdown mode. I was depressed, and like lots of people, we went on a cooking new things and eating it all binge. I found myself at 6'1" and 305 pounds. Doctor was about to put me on a bunch of type 2 diabetes drugs. My daily routine included a huge percentage of living in regret and negative thinking. I began to live in gratitude and slowly pulled out. On my 61st birthday, happy belated, this month I am down to 210 pounds. My marriage is way better and I'm much happier. So I've certainly manifested a ton I have to be grateful for. And that's pretty much like the key part of this email that I want to specify. So first of all, Steve, what an amazing story. And I'm so excited. I'm looking back at this. I'm trying to do some math here. And it sounds to me like 95 pounds if I've got things right since September.
That's right. Yep. And sometimes I'd get stuck and sometimes I wouldn't. But it was all about keeping a positive mindset and really the gratitude part really helped me a whole lot.
Yeah, for sure. So through that, before we dive in, is there anything I missed or any details you think that the audience should have for further context about where you were at or what you were doing with all this?
Exactly. Yeah, that's a great idea. So I guess COVID really started, I guess, about last March, February, something like that. And, everybody's locked down in their house. And my wife is a fantastic cook. She's a fantastic baker. Like lots of people, I think lots of married couples, you spoil each other with food, right? And so we started baking bread all the time and cooking things that had vegetable oil and lots of sugar and lots of carbs and that kind of thing. And we were just spoiling each other with like, what new thing can we eat this week or today? And just eating like crazy. And because of COVID, I had some financial setbacks, and that was more depressing. And you're stuck in the house and you can't, improve your financial wherewithal. And so when I went to the doctor, I was feeling rotten, and he did some tests, and my A1C was just about to climb up into, I was in pre-diabetes, about to climb into diabetic stage. And a couple of careers ago, I was in some what's called durable medical equipment, and we sold a lot of diabetes supplies and diabetic shoes and that kind of thing. And that scared me just terribly, because I've seen those kind of people losing a toe, then losing a foot, then losing their leg. And I don't know if you know this, but once you lose any part of an extremity with diabetes, it's a 50% death rate at 24 months. Wow. So it's really serious, and I consider diabetes a super serious thing. If your listeners don't know this, inflammation is what kills you. Inflammation leads to heart disease, number one, killer. Number two, cancer. Inflammation potentiates cancer. And number three is dementia. All the dementias, including Alzheimer's, all of those are brought by inflammation, and diabetes and pre-diabetes are terrible for inflammation. So scared me to death. And I was thinking, well, I've got to help myself. And I was going through my Kindle looking for self-improvement books. And I got to tell you, I think that there's a power in a name, and there's a superpower in a great name. And you named your book great. And it grabbed my attention. And I was like, I've tried this stuff or looked at it, and it just seemed kind of hippy dippy to me. And one of the things that's so great about your book is that, to me, the mark of a really good writer is somebody that can take highly complex thoughts and boil them down into simple words that still convey the same thought. And that's what you did in your book. I mean, you don't have to, and I didn't know how it worked at first. I just said, what have I got to lose? I'm in a bad place. I got to start somewhere. And it's so simple and so easy. At the same time, I got a couple of other books. One of them was called Tiny Habits. Another one's called Atomic Habits. And basically what they say is, whatever you're trying to do is start with the habits so tiny and small and easy that you won't quit the next time. So if you're trying to floss your teeth, just floss one right after you get through brushing. If you're trying to go to the gym, just put your gym clothes on, step outside the door and walk back in. Then all of a sudden you've changed your story, because you're all of a sudden the kind of person that's can get up out of bed, get your gym clothes on and go out the door. And then you just work on it from there. And so I started reading your book and doing the exercises, and they really started working for me. I've heard it said, I think I heard you say this one time in one of your interviews, that changed the movie of your life. You're the central character in your movie, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to be the victim. You don't have to be a bystander. You need to be the star, and you need to be a star that goes through a crucible to where you come out the other side as the hero, right? And that's what I'm becoming, in my eyes anyway, and hopefully to my family and to the rest of the world. And because I've had these successes, I know that's what's coming for me. And so if in my imagination, I've named this chapter of my life how I changed my life, lost 95 pounds in 195 days using the law of attraction, neuroscience, and habit. Or my dog brain can't do fractions. I know that sounds crazy, but I'll explain that in a minute. So one of the things I think about, you say the universe, and you can use God, whatever I believe in God. And so all through the day, I try to do the gratitude exercises that you talked about. The very first one I do is I wake up every morning and I pick up this. And before I get out of bed, I do some of the exercise. I think it's the time travel.
Oh, the time lapse method. Yep.
Time lapse, where so I have about 15. The first one is, I think my parents are gone, but I have gratitude for them. My wife is with me now. I have a gratitude for her. And then the next one is the things I'm trying to manifest in the future now. Mm-hmm. And I close my eyes and I think word pictures. I visualize on each one of those the past, the present, and the future. And I think that's exactly how to do it, because it's been working for me.
Yeah. So really quick to that point, I'm glad what you're doing right now, because you're very intentionally articulating for people your process, so they have something to latch onto. And the question of whether it's the right way, I mean, I always answer is, if it's feeling good for you, it's the right way. Because I think what you just described is something that people can very easily leverage in their life. And if they don't like that way of doing it, they can still get a win you know, maybe they're not visualizing it specifically, maybe they're just saying it, or maybe they're tapping into their feelings, or maybe a combination. So you wondering if you're doing it right. I mean, obviously you're doing something right, losing, you know, 95 pounds in 195 days. And more importantly, really, it seems to me, enjoying the journey as you do this, which I think
Right.
is awesome. So,
Right.
so yeah, just a quick little aside on that. I mean, I think you're doing great with this.
Thank you. I mean, coming from the guy that wrote the book that's working for me, I really appreciate that. The second thing I do is I've always heard about these people making a cardboard vision board where they cut pictures out of a magazine, and that sounded like too much homework to me. So what I just did was picked up my Kindle, joined Pinterest, and grabbed 100,000 pictures out of there to put on my own vision board. Not 100,000, about 150. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, I want to be in shape, even better, because there's guys on there that are in fantastic shape. I want this kind of house. Where do I want it? How many acres? I want what do I want my financial fitness to look like? That kind of thing. And they're all easy pictures to find. And I do the exact same thing. If I see a house that a home that I love, I imagine myself walking through it. That kind of thing. And neither one of them takes more than, if I'm really into it, 10 minutes. Probably it's 10 minutes altogether.
Nice.
And so that kick starts my day in a very positive way, it seems like. So as I was going through my weight loss, your book really kind of piqued my interest about a lot of these different self-improvement techniques. And so I started wondering, well, it's not that it's not working, but I would like to know how, right? I would like how does it work that makes sense to me? And so I said to myself, what I think is that when you express gratitude for anything, that means you've received something. And if you received it in the present, I mean, that's fantastic. If you can convince yourself that you've already received it, even though it's in the future, then you have that feeling of receiving something. So you should feel gratitude, right? And what I believe God does is he supercharges your reticular activating system in your brain. And that's the part of your brain that, like, if you buy a blue Ford truck, all of a sudden you start seeing blue Ford trucks everywhere, right? And so what I believe is that the God universe, whatever you want to call it, opens your mind to the opportunities, opens your mind to the actions you can take. And so I began, as far as the weight loss, I began, when I was younger, I started lifting weights at 16, and I was pretty much a meathead all my younger life, until I had amassed the money and gotten the experience. And for about 8 years, I owned a Gold's Gym in Oxford, Mississippi. And it was a fantastic part of my life. I loved it. But when I was younger, I could out-train a bad diet. I could out-train a night on the town, right? It was probably 60% training, 40% diet. If I was really buckling down, I would diet for a couple of months, but I really didn't know what I was doing, and I didn't really care because I could always out-train it. So when I hit about 50, that's when things started going down. And at this point, it's probably 85% diet and probably 15% training. And I still train. I can't hit the big iron like I used to, but I still train pretty hard for me. I've got some orthopedic challenges, and that's another thing that happened when I got older, is I have 2 metal hips. Both of my knees have been scoped twice. I've got a shoulder that was separated shoulder. It's never been fixed. But again, I feel like you have a responsibility, whether a challenge like that is your fault or not. It's your responsibility on how to react to it. And so as far as the orthopedic challenges, I found a guy on YouTube that basically he's called a knees over toes guy. And he just like you, he was nice enough to respond to a message I sent him. He said, just start walking backwards in your living room. And that's all I did. And in 4 weeks, my knee pain was gone.
Wow. Isn't
And
that
that
interesting?
it was unbelievable how his, I mean, he's got some other techniques that I'm building up to, but I would have never thought I've got to take responsibility for this and overcome this problem without, and look for him and take the chance and do the action. And so I did the same thing with my nutrition. I started looking on YouTube, and found a bunch of doctors that are, keto carnivore type doctors. And I tailored a diet and intermittent fasting, and I tailored when I ate, and squeezed down my eating window. And I just, the weight started falling off. And this last time I went to the doctor and had a complete set of labs. Um, my HDL was high, my triglycerides were low, my A1C was perfect, my blood pressure was perfect, my LDL was a little high. But what I found out in my investigation is that a high HDL is 10 times more protective than a high, than having a high LDL is dangerous. So um, I'm super happy about my health and my nutrition, and my progress there. So when I said that the subtitle of my chapter would be "My Dog Brain Can't Do Fractions," what I was talking about there was that I believe that winning is a habit. And so I walk around with a to-do list all day long, and I have a bunch of little small things. And um, as I check them off, I think that I get a dopamine hit. And dopamine is the brain chemical that lights up. If you put your head in a PET scanner, it's going to light up for cocaine, for carbs, for sugar, or just for happiness, all the same way, right?
Yeah.
And it's addictive. I mean, dopamine is addictive. And so I want to hit my brain with as much dopamine as I can all day long for good things. And so the way you train a real dog is with loving firmness, right? So if I'm training my dog with a piece of bacon, he doesn't know if I'm giving a fourth of a piece of bacon or the whole slice. So he can't do fractions. And my brain, my subconscious brain, is the exact same way. It can't tell when it's getting dopamine if it's getting it from the future that I'm trying to manifest, or from these little things on my to-do list. And so I believe that I was feeding my subconscious just trash for all those months during COVID. I need to feed it good stuff now, because my understanding is that, um, or the way that it's working for me anyway, is that your subconscious is for one thing, and that's for survival. And if you're surviving in a bad place, all it knows is you're surviving. And if you're still feeding it, but if you start feeding it good stuff, it's going to be uncomfortable, and you have to consciously tell it, no, I'm going to be firm with you, dog brain. You're going to get good stuff from now on. And it might make you uncomfortable, but you're going to get this good stuff. And he can't tell, my dog brain can't tell whether I'm giving him a quarter piece of dopamine or a whole slice. And so that's what I'm trying to feed my subconscious now.
Nice. So real quick, because you've dropped a lot of gold. You've given a very detailed answer. And I want to try to do a little bit of a breakdown of this for people. And I want to invite you to let me know if I'm misinterpreting, because I want to make sure that I'm representing your thought process right. But I'm hearing a number of things for you on this. One, because you know me, I'm a strategy guy. I'm of course hearing the recognition of how strategy can really be leveraged. And okay, we understand that what we're putting into our mind is going to produce a result. And I mean, obviously, this is a law of attraction channel. Most people have read the book. They understand they're with that. But even if you don't believe in the law of attraction, there's this understanding of what you put into your mind is in some way, shape, or form going to manifest certain results. And therefore, it becomes a task of introducing strategically and intentionally more positive ideas, more positive thoughts. But what I'm hearing here also is, because there's always this question of like, law of attraction, where does action come into play? Where does that even fit into the equation? And what I'm hearing here is, fortunately, between my book and a couple of others, you heard a combination of content and a delivery of words that inspired you just enough that you decided to take action, not just in physical action, but just in terms of moving forward with momentum, moving forward with the intention of researching that orthopedic thing. Like a lot of times we think of the law of attraction as like everything's going to be this mysterious, magical, oh, look, everything's better. But sometimes it might come in the form of, no, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling inspired. I'm doing this research. I found this person. And here's the magic. He gave me just the advice I was needing to get me on the right path. That very simple thing of walking backwards and your knees feel better. And not only have you received a positive manifestation in that moment, also a raindrop for more things to come, but you are, through that positive experience, inspired to move forward and continue in a direction. So just, recapping what you're saying here, my best interpretation is it's this wonderful web, this wonderful combination of coincidences, even though they're not really coincidences, but things unfolding in a certain way, finding the right resources, moving forward in this direction, but all fueled by that first decision of, let me just do something small here. Let me take one baby step in the right direction. Let me be willing to give myself permission to take as small a step as I need to, but as large as a step as I want to. That's what I'm really getting from you here as you're breaking this down. How does that land for you as I describe my interpretation of your experience and your pathway here?
Sounds perfect. Einstein said that in his mind, the biggest miracle in the universe was compound interest. And that's how I feel about this process, is that don't get stuck. If I'm so grateful that I didn't get stuck on the very first step, because it's momentum. It's starting that very first tiny step. And like I was talking about the dopamine, I consciously wrote that in my to-do list so I could check it off. And I don't know if you've ever seen that meme of that little 5-year-old kid going like this.
Yep.
I actually do that every time I hit my to-do list, or every time I have a manifestation. I do this because I believe that your brain is intensely connected to your body. I mean, when you meditate, you get your heart rate down. That's really good for you. And my understanding from one of the neuroscientists I watch on YouTube is that there's this, it's been around, but this starting to expand a huge body of knowledge called epigenetics. And epigenetics is basically just which of your genes turn on and off in relation to both external and internal uh, influences. So if there's absolutely no doubt that if you're stressed all the time because of internals, just because of your worrying all the time, you have cortisol in your system, and cortisol will turn on cancer genes that are not turned on now. So you might have the propensity to have cancer or heart disease or whatever, but if you have a very low stress, those genes might never turn on. The same way with outside toxins, or if you're eating the wrong kind of foods, some genes will turn on and off depending on what you put into your body. And a bunch of that's mental for me. I think it's internal, and that's exactly right.
Yeah. Well, one little observation here as you're saying this, you mentioned God before, and you're mentioning epigenetics now. And I think sometimes people come into the law of attraction with this skewed perception that it's got to be really defined and really specific. But for me, the universe is everything. And, the universe and God are the same thing, depending on how you want to look at him or her
Absolutely.
or it. And also epigenetics is an aspect of our three-dimensional reality, which is an extension of the universe, meaning everyone listening right now, they don't necessarily have to study epigenetics, but it's also an option for them if they are so inspired on their path, on their journey, while they're engaging in gratitude and visualization and scripting methods, and where they'll be inspired to go down a rabbit hole of research or do something else. Wherever they're inspired, you are demonstrating here in your own unique way, they're going to get more information that's going to fuel them more in that positive direction. That's the momentum that you were talking about before. So I just want to, again, drop this observation as we're talking, because I'm sure I'm going to do a lead in when I title this video or I make the thumbnail, whatever, about, losing those 95 pounds in 195 days, or, whatever it might be.
Right.
And I think it's important for people to understand that whether it's the weight loss, whether it's the health, whether it's the relationships, whether it's the money, there's so many possible pathways by which you might manifest this that might come through the form of research, of reaching out to somebody else, of getting that idea, or it doesn't even involve any of that. It's more of a thing where you're just coming, following along on your way, following on inspiration, and maybe you're receiving it in that way. There's so many different ways that may or may not be matching what you're articulating, Steve. But I do really want to say that I'm so glad that you're giving this example, because this is a perfect demonstration that there's so much more possibility, not only in terms of the results, but in terms of the experience and enjoyment of the journey to those results.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. You know, I don't know if this is true or not. I heard some neuroscientist on YouTube say that um, average human thinks 50 to 70,000 discrete thoughts a day. And if
Mm-hmm.
you don't, if I don't consciously take a hold of those thoughts and notice when I mean, I think every human in the world can go down the rabbit hole of like, oh, those politics are making me upset, or my neighbor hasn't returned the mower, or whatever, and you fixate on that. And if I have learned now to stop myself. And I think your technique is the blitz technique, where you just look around the room and have gratitude for things.
Mm-hmm.
And right after I got up the other day, a little story is I was getting ready to brush my teeth, and I was going down that rabbit hole, and I literally just looked down at the soap dispenser, and I was like, I have gratitude for this silly soap dispenser. And like, well, and I thought to myself, how can I have gratitude? And I said, well, I wash my hands with it about 4 or 5 times a day. Maybe I didn't get COVID because of that soap dispenser, and it made sense to me, and that's what I do all day long. If I start going down a rabbit hole, I mean, one of the things we said before, that I said to you before we started recording, was that I appreciated that you gave me the most valuable, or your book gave me the most valuable commodity in the world, and that's time. I'm older. Time is super valuable for me. You've probably given me many, because I've helped my health, probably given me many years, down at the end of my life, but you also given me time right today, when every time I have a bad thought that's going into my subconscious, that's feeding my subconscious, I have the ability now to notice it, stop
Mm-hmm.
it, and use this technique. I can look at a tree and say, that's a beautiful tree. I have gratitude for that tree. And and whether it's silly or not, it replaces that negative thought with a positive one. That gives you time, happy time. So I really
Yes.
appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you. And just to, a quick little wrap up, even though we're not done. I mean, it sounds to me again like, you engage in this process of gratitude and or visualization, and things just unfold. You are maybe, you're making choices and decisions in terms of your diet. You're making choices and decisions in terms of your fitness, but there are decisions, I would imagine, that are easy to make because you're already following along a way where there's momentum and there's ease and there's joy and there's positive expectation and positive anticipation, while simultaneously there's still also a relaxed confidence of, I don't need to get there now because technically in many ways I already am there. And it's just an evolving there that gets better and better and better and better. Is that a fair way to describe your journey right now, this weight loss right now?
It is, and I have come to believe now that that's the way it is with anything I'm trying to manifest. I mean, I of course I want, like I said in my email, I'm looking for financial freedom after this difficult time with COVID, and what this process has convinced me is to look at how success happens. It happens a little tiny bit at a time. It happens with habit. It happens by, like I said, using neuroscience to bribe my brain with dopamine, and to fill my subconscious with positive things, so that I think at some point your subconscious is going, why, I'll feel uncomfortable if you don't get there. So let me put the opportunities in front of you so that you will get there.
Mm, love it. Love it. Awesome. So, full disclosure to the audience, when you knew that you were going to come on, you're awesome. I understand you've prepared some things that you just want to make sure you shared with the audience, thoughts, observations, this part of the journey. In terms of what we covered so far, is there anything that we've missed that you wanted to make sure to share with the audience?
Well, I will just say that there's two last if I'm having problems with gratitude, there's two last stories I guess I'll tell that that I can always go to, and one of them happened to my mother. And the story she told me, one of them happened to me. The first one was my mother would always tell us a story about when Dad came home from the Pacific Theater in late '45, and he was a Navy guy. He sailed on a troop ship, and if you ever saw the first few opening scenes of Saving Private Ryan, he was the guy that drove those landing ships up on the beach, and on every single one but the very first one, Guadalcanal. All the rest of them, he was driving Marines up on the beach. And what he told us was that for the kamikazes, the places they wanted to hit was the aircraft carriers first, and then the troop ships, because they knew the Marines were coming on the troop ships. And when she would tell that story about how grateful and how happy she was that he was home, I'm grateful because I'm here, but I wasn't there when she was there. But he wouldn't talk about it till later. But he said kamikazes almost hit his ship 3 or 4 times. Um, that a couple of landings, both landing ships on either side of him got blown up. He could have received that shell. And then so I'm super grateful because I can just imagine that her gratefulness, and I can go there and just get filled with that feeling. The other one is that when my wife was 8 months pregnant, my son came along as a preemie, and she had high blood pressure, what's called preeclampsia, and usually super high blood pressure. And what usually cures it is the delivery, but it didn't. She was in the ICU for 7 days, and I can tell you, I've been in some bad car wrecks. I've never been as scared as I was then, and I've never been as grateful as when I got to bring her and my son home. So the advice I would say to somebody that's in a dark place is think about the time in your life when you were the most grateful, you were the most happy, whatever it is, and access that. And that's what we're talking about. I don't know what, I've heard you talk about channeling. I don't know what that is, but that's what I channel. Those two events. If I can't work up the gratitude that day, those are my two go-tos.
Nice. And before we hit the record button, you expressed an interest in asking about channeling. Was there a specific question that you wanted to kind of throw out to get
Yeah,
that part of the
yeah.
conversation
I
going?
don't even. I've heard you talk about it. I've heard you say you are a channel to somebody. I don't know how that works.
Yeah, so I mean, we're different topics, surprise bonus topic for people listening. Um, so I mean, the way I would describe channeling, and obviously I don't want to get anyone going down an unnecessary rabbit hole of different stuff, but a lot of people that find their way to law of attraction, of course, they've heard of Abraham Hicks, which is Jerry Hicks and Esther Hicks. Jerry's passed away, and Esther channels in the sense that she becomes a conduit, so to speak, for an outside presence or a number of entities of conscious beings called Abraham. So she'll put herself in a meditative trance, for lack of a better term, and she will communicate the words of Abraham in addressing a crowd, answering a question, things of that nature. So my understanding of a classic definition of a channel is someone who basically accesses a different higher being and literally speaks through their body, where they're fed the information and they are interpreted. It's almost like a game of telephone, only instead of a human being in a physical world saying it to you and you could hear the words, they're picking it up in some other way. And I have interviewed two people that they are channels. I never had them channel on my channel. I never had them bring in the entity or spirit or entities that they were communicated, because I was interviewing them about different things. But to answer your question, that's a classical version. But by that same token, I believe that even when we're not communicating in that way and sharing the words or thoughts or ideas or answers of a specific being in that way, I believe we're channeling when we're coming up with brilliant ideas, when we write a book, when we do, is it an upload or is it a download? I just think because, like, we have access to, whether you want to say God, your higher being, or whatever, your higher spirit, your higher self, whatever it might be. I think, when we let go and when we have more of an allowance, we have access to inspirations, ideas, muses, which I think is just another way of channeling. We're not saying it in words the way a classic definition might be, but we are accessing and sharing information and putting it in a certain format. Again, for me, I've got to believe that there's an aspect of that that came through in my book where the information was presented or spit out in a certain way. Of course, I massaged it very consciously because, like you were saying, and I appreciate the feedback of that, it was very easy to get through. I was very intentional about almost micromanaging not just the sentences themselves, but how the sentences flowed into one another and the paragraphs and the pages and the chapters into one another. Because for me, I had this understanding of, if I really want this to be a book that really serves people, it's got to be a book that they actually read. So I was very intentional on that piece. But in terms of spitting out just the ideas, I believe an aspect of that was kind of channeling, although I don't proclaim to be a channel because most people interpret it in the other way. With
Right.
that word salad I just threw at you, does that answer your question, or did
That
it bring up
that
other
makes sense.
ones?
I mean, I can't. I mean, my understanding. I mean, I think everybody who's subconscious has taken over has. The examples I can think of is you're standing in the shower and you don't remember if you washed your hair, but you had some thoughts run into each other that like was an epiphany. Where did they come from?
Mm-hmm.
Or you got in your car and right after you're going to work in the morning and right after you put the coffee in the holder, all of a sudden you're at work and you don't remember any of the rush hour traffic. You don't remember any of it. And I know that's, I think, an indication of a different kind of brainwave. There's super excited. But I know that some of my best ideas come from that. I don't know whether it's God, the universe, or who's handing me those, but that's somebody, right?
Yeah, and it's funny. I'm with you, and I agree. And for me, the fun part is not knowing entirely how, because I don't need to. All I know is that the ideas come through, and I share them, and I enjoy them, and I certainly appreciate them. But for me, there's a certain fun aspect in not being able to say, well, is it the subconscious mind? Is it the universe? Are they connected? Are they the same thing? I'm personally very excited by the idea that I don't need to know in order for me to benefit. I kind of identify I am, right now 3-dimensional in this tangible space with access to certain information, but consciously we all have our own limits in terms of the access and we bring it through in another way. So I'm kind of the mindset, and I invite anyone to either take this approach or take their own. But I'm of this mindset of, you know what, it's fun that I don't know exactly. I'm just really grateful for how it comes, and I'll continue to invite it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I, I was thinking about this before we started that a really simple way to describe the law of attraction is gratitude uh, practiced often and as a habit in and in the future tense, and that will, I mean, whatever you're trying to manifest, and that will almost, it's a short definition, but it doesn't tell you how to do it. And that's what I love about your book, is that there's so much of it that gives just easy strategies for somebody to follow, and that it
Thank
worked
you.
for me.
Thank you. Awesome. All right. So, Steve, as we wrap things up, again, I imagine that a lot of people are going to listen to this for a lot of different reasons, but I'm sure a number of people that are specifically geared towards weight loss in particular, they're going to find their way here. To those people, and in part to anyone with any kind of goal, is there any parting words of wisdom, guidance, advice, or insight that you might want to share as to helping other people that might also want to find their way to losing 95 pounds in 195 days, or any other suitable weight loss, fitness, nutrition, or other kind of life goal?
Yeah, yeah, sure. Number one is you run out of willpower very early. I mean, I think it's been proven that everybody starts out with a certain amount of gas in their willpower gas tank at the first of the day, and every little decision you make uses up some of it. So you have to depend on habit. You have to have a habit that I do this, it triggers this habit of whatever my, I used to, one of the negative thoughts I used to have was, I have a sweet tooth. Well, you have to change your story. I don't have a sweet tooth. And you have to figure out why you don't have a sweet tooth now. What's more important? Do you want to have a stroke and have your kids wipe your butt when you're 65 or 70? Or do you want to play with your great grandkids? That kind of thing. So you have to have a habit instead of willpower. The law of attraction is really what started me down this latest path. but it's probably in your life, it's probably most people's life, it's more nutrition and exercise. Exercise is kind of like the yeast, it's super important, you got to have it. But um, number one, keto or carnivore is the, I believe, in my estimation, I mean, it's the best diet you can have. Uh, Very low carb means your insulin and glucose do not spike; they're very level, and you'll start, instead of using carbs for fuel, you'll start using your stored fat on board. And as far as exercise is concerned, find something you love. If you don't like lifting heavy things, don't go do that. Don't go join the gym. If what you do, what you'll do, that's the main thing. If you have a dog, walk it every day. Your dog will love you, and you will love your dog more than you've ever seen in your life. If the thing you like to do is run a chainsaw, go run a chainsaw. But the last thing about fitness is I would say you can't train if you're hurt. So don't hurt yourself. So, don't, I mean, you should sweat every day, but don't go hurt yourself, and do what you love. Don't do something you'll dread.
Quick little notes here, just in case it's legally relevant. Obviously, not medical advice. Everyone consult your own doctor, that kind of thing. In case it should be said, I said it for the benefit of both of us.
Thank you very much.
With that said, just a quick also preface here. You're talking about introducing. Well, I'm paraphrasing. I mean, you said like if you don't like something from a fitness level, you're not going to do it. I'll reword it and say like make sure you have fun with what you're doing. Again, and walking a dog can be such a fun meditative experience, or whatever. For me, when I got in shape years back, I was bored at the gym, so I joined a dojo because sensei, punching and kicking and working out with people and working the pads, that was fun for me, so it kept me engaged. But also along those lines, I would say you strategically introduced the very important piece of finding a big why. It's like, listen, you don't want this to happen, do you? That's a big why. I would offer on top, and invite you to correct me if you disagree, but I doubt you do. Just as you want to instill fun in the fitness aspect, see if you can instill fun in the food aspect. See if you can find foods that are healthy but also taste great. Do some research, experiment, look around, try things out, have fun. And since this is a law of attraction interview and channel, go with gratitude, because gratitude will be the fuel that will push you forward as you're going down these journeys through your health, through your fitness, through your diet, through your nutrition. So that's a quick little sum up. Feel free if there's any more that you wanted to add on top of what I just
All I
said
would
there.
say, yeah, all I would say is that your food doesn't have to be bland. I mean, um, uh, I eat a little bit of vegetables every single day, but I eat super savory, fatty, great meat, and it doesn't have to be expensive either. But um, strong tastes are usually what you miss when you go on a diet. And so if you eat like a great piece of sirloin, or just a great hamburger, or some spare ribs, whatever, as long as it's low carb, as long as all you're getting is protein and fat, and it's super savory, you won't miss the carbs.
And I'm no nutrition expert, so take this with a grain of salt, no pun intended. But I mean, I imagine garlic and onion are healthy
Absolutely.
ways of adding a lot of flavor as well.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's, in fact, again, you can go on Pinterest or Reddit, and there are innumerable keto and carnivore recipes that will take the place and substitute for. And the great thing about good fatty meat is that it's super satiating. So if you're doing intermittent fasting at the same time, you won't miss the meal that you like. Say if you're uh, what I do most days is just eat one meal a day. I eat lunch. That's it. And so uh, I never feel a hunger pang until the next morning. And the next morning, again, I eat some. What I do is just take a pinch of salt, and that's a strong taste, gets me through to lunch. And
Love it.
so, you'd be surprised how satiating fat and protein is. So, I mean, that's just again, I'm not a medical doctor. I'm just some guy on an interview. So don't go see your doctor first.
Cool. Well, Steve, doctor or no, you've been so generous with your story, with your insights, with your views and your suggestions. I want to thank you for coming on today, sharing this. And again, there were points, and I mean this in a good way, by the way. There were points where you were talking for a long time without me interrupting. I was very intentional about not interrupting you because I realized you were dropping a lot of gold nuggets throughout in those sentences. So I would encourage people to take their time, go through this interview again, listen to the things that you're saying, glean the best wisdom, the best guidance they can from that, the things that work for them the most, that resonate with them the most, and to just be inspired and keep moving forward. So thank you so much for chatting it up with me today. I really enjoyed our conversation. I really appreciate you.
Thank you for inviting me very much.